Calm down, diddly 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 diddly. They did their best, shoddily iddly iddly diddly. Gotta be nice, hostility diddly diddly diddly. Ah, hell, diddly ding dong crap! Can't you morons do anything right?
If you would have told me, facing Joelicus Maximus, I, the Toronto Bundy, would lose 74-58 after he scores 9 points from Kirk Cousins, 3 from Rachaad White, 5 from DJ Moore, 0 points from George Kittle, 4 points from the Falcons defense, and 7 from his kicker. If you would have told me all this, I wouldn't have believed you. Also, without the help of Devin Achane. How did this happen to Team Bundy? 13 points from Josh Allen. I have to tell you this. And oh, by the way, this is your Week 6 recap. Bundy's here, upset, and you were there, hopefully depressed. How did this happen to us? Well, let me tell you. I've told you in the past that the most frustrating fantasy loss that I have ever experienced was against Pedro several years ago when I had, whether it was Fournette or whoever the fuck it was, I had a Tampa Bay running back just down by 4 to 5 points at the beginning of the Monday night game. And Bruce Arians just hated on every fantasy owner and just didn't play. I think he fumbled in the first drive or something like that. I think he fumbled, and after that, he never saw the ball again. That was the most frustrating loss and still is the most frustrating loss. This was not it. Reason being is Pedro gets away with these Weasley little victories every year. So the fact that it was him really pissed me off. This happened to Joe, and victories, Joe doesn't come across victories very often, so this isn't a pattern for Joe. It's just my turn. The fantasy gods just weren't in my favor this week. But this game, this Sunday night game, definitely goes up there as a game that pissed me off beyond any words that I could possibly convey on the mic. The Giants, first, I thought that by the end of the game, if the Giants had lost, I thought I would take more satisfaction in them losing, but I didn't. It was just a feeling of contempt. I just felt like, is it worth it now? Like, was it worth it to fucking hold Josh Allen at 1 point at halftime and you lose anyway? Right? Was it all worth it? I knew the Giants were going to lose. No, you weren't going to have a week where the Jets dethrone the Eagles and the Giants also beat the Buffalo Bills. It's just New York sports. It just doesn't work out that way. But I was pissed. And especially after Tyler Bass missing 2 kicks. Actually, he missed 1, and the other one was blocked, and they were both 50-plus kicks. So that was 10 points that I missed out on. 10 points. So he gets a big, fat 0 from me. 5 points from the Dolphins' defense. 10, at the very least, from Michael Pittman. When Zay Flowers got a touchdown and later got 11 points. I was wrestling back and forth before the game to put Zay Flowers in. And when he got the touchdown, I was like, damn it, is Michael Pittman going to get a touchdown? Does Michael Pittman have any touchdown? I think he has 1 this year. Yes, the very first game of the season, he had 15 points, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But I didn't think he was going to pull it off. But eventually, he got 109 yards, something like that. So good performance from Michael Pittman. Ja'Marr Chase, what are you going to do? If you would have told me, if you would have said, look, after Ja'Marr Chase got that 37-point performance, you were going to lose to Joe. Yo, if the Terminator just swooped into my room last week and told me, Yalla, Bundy, I'm here to help you. You will lose to Joe. You will lose next week. He will score 74 and you will lose. And I'd be like, Arnold, you trying to tell me that the 1-4 Joelicus Maximus is going to defeat me with 74 points when 76 points is my low? Is that what you're telling me? Yeah. Listen to me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to tell you, you son of a bitch. Actually, I just wanted to say that. Dylan, you son of a bitch. If he would have told me that, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not losing to Joe. How did this happen? How? Travis Etienne He's just one of those players, along with Jakobi Meyers, who's on Joe's bench. He's just one of those players like David Montgomery, who I've had over the past few years. They did absolutely nothing, and now they're performing like top-tier players. Jakobi Meyers, at the very least, he was a strong player for the Patriots, but ETN never had this consistency that all of a sudden is just bubbling up now. 31 points last week and 19 this week. Tank, Bigsby, Ed. And of course, David Montgomery. We'll get to him later. I'm fucking glad that he got injured. But how did this happen? How did this happen to us? Joe, how did you do it? How did you do it? Oh, the very next score. And of course, I got the Tito Award. Forgot to mention that. The very next game that we go on to is Pork Chop Express defeating Acknowledge Me 119-180. Of course, I was reminded of my Tito Award because Paul receives the Kirk Cameron Award for fantasy excellence. 22 points from Tua. He decided to put him in instead of Herbert, and I kind of looked at it. I gave it the Robert De Niro look, but it worked out for Paul. 18 points from Justin Herbert on his bench, and just 7 points from Bijan Robinson. Now, Bijan clearly is, whatever it is that Atlanta's doing, maybe they're holding him back a bit. Maybe later on in the year, they're going to turn those 14 carries to maybe 18 to 20. I don't know. But right now, Bijan Robinson was not worth your number one selection. Of course, this is me playing, the revisionist history, trying to rewrite this shit. Of course, you didn't know that. He was a wise pick at the 8th slot in the draft. But at this point in the season, he's just not putting up numbers. But at the very least, Raheem Mostert with 30 points. Whatever's happening in Miami, I'd like a piece of it, but I don't want to make any trade offers because you motherfuckers would just think that, your player's just worth too much. So fuck all of you. A.J. Brown with 13 points. T. Higgins, who has struggled, as I believe he missed last week. But T. Higgins, with exception to that 2-touchdown game that he had week 2 versus the Baltimore Ravens, he scored 20 points. Hasn't done much, just 20 yards this week, 2 catches for 2 points. At the very least, he has a bye this week to maybe recover from whatever injuries he is having. Travis Kelce, of course, with his 12-point performance on Thursday Night Football. And Alexander Madison is he's a RB, he's a low-end RB2. Definitely a flex position, but maybe Paul should really consider throwing in Zach Moss into the mix. I do love the situation with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor because you don't know what's happening. You don't know if the Colts are gradually just gonna give Jonathan Taylor the lion's share of the carries, or if Zach Moss is still gonna be a thing. Don't ever forget what NFL teams have done over this past year. They have found out that we can get players who we pay nothing to pretty much put up the same production as these big running backs. So if every run that Zach Moss pulls off for a touchdown, and I think he had that long touchdown run on the very first, right, he had 165 yards last week. Whenever he bursts out for those big runs, Jonathan Taylor just has to look at that and just go, well, that's why all of this is happening. That's why I've had so much turmoil with this team, because why would they pay me? Why would they be so willing to pay me this money when they can get the same production from players who are just basically nothings? Okay, so on the other side, you had 7 points from Brock Purdy for Ed. Breece Hall with a good game, 14 points. Finally, Ed makes a wise decision by picking up Dante Foreman, who only gets 6 points. But with the injury to Khalil Herbert, with the right matchup, who knows, maybe Dante Foreman can get in there for a touchdown and give Ed some sort of a running game, which he doesn't have outside of Breece Hall. Brandon Ayuk with 7 points, 9 points for Garrett Wilson, just 3 points for Sam Laporta. And the recent news of Anthony Richardson's season being over, we would expect Ed to finally dump off Anthony Richardson off of his squad for the remainder of the season, but judging by Ed's decisions this year, right, you can never tell, right? Big Papa Poop defeats Jokes on You 75-65. Justin Fields with an injury. How long is Justin Fields going to be out? Jay is hopeful that maybe he only misses a week or two. But of course, I would argue that with a talent like this, do the Chicago Bears necessarily want to throw him out there so quickly? Don't they want to just wait a couple games, maybe make Jay look terrible for selecting him as his keeper? What a terrible decision by Jay. Maybe later on when we discuss the week 7 matchups, we'll try to see who Jay will put in there for the quarterback slot as he faces Team Bundy. 3 points for Calvin Ridley. Nico Collins with 8 points, just 2 points from Zach Ertz, and a good performance from Amon St. Brown. 5 points for Jonathan Taylor on the bench, and 10 for Kyle Pitts. Look at that. Kyle Pitts he's just fucking with you, Jay. He's just like, yeah, you want to bench me? You want to bench me? 8 points last week, and this week I got a touchdown, Jay. Now this is going to mess with Jay. Now Jay's going to want to throw him into the mix. Is he or isn't he? Isn't he or isn't he? Where has this collapse, what is the genesis of this collapse for Pedro? The genesis of this collapse are the unfortunate weeks that Davante Adams has put together. Week 4, 8 receptions for 75 yards. Week 5, 4 receptions for 45 yards. And just this week, 2 receptions for 29 yards. So that's just basically nothing from a receiver that you drafted with your very first pick. And of course, Jalen Waddle, his keeper, hasn't really been doing much, right? I mean, Jalen Waddle had that one game. No, he doesn't even have a game. This last week was his largest total with 50 yards, 1 touchdown, and 11 total points. Dameon Pierce is also a black eye on Pedro's team, as he hasn't really done shit either. He's been very inconsistent. So, joke's on you. He's there. We're not necessarily going to say he's in the dungeon with Hensel, and we'll get to Hensel in a second. He's not necessarily in the dungeon with Hensel, but if he continues to have these struggles with Davante Adams, which, by the way, Jimmy Garoppolo is now injured, so perhaps now with the backup quarterback, maybe Davante Adams can start to see some more production, right? You would hope so. I don't hope so, but that's just me. Everybody doesn't have to feel the way I feel. And of course, the injury to James Conner is something that's hurting Pedro. So these next few weeks are going to be very telling for Pedro's season. We hope it all goes horribly for him and he cries in a corner, weeping with Hensel. The very next game we move on to here is a tie. Highlander, the trilogy, 100-100 with Ewok Rape. Well, what do you know? The old Spider-Man meme. These two fags pointing at each other. They, of course, have to make out this week on their podcast. I look forward to that. Patrick Mahomes with 17 points, 14 from Chuba Herbert. Look at that, Andy, getting touchdowns from his running backs. When did he pick up Chuba Herbert? Did he draft him? Yes, Andy drafted Chuba. Yes, and then he dropped him. No. Okay. I see what happens here. It's July 30th. I think this is when the commish resetted the lineups, and maybe Andy had Chuba by the end of the season, but whatever before that, he drops him off of the team. Yeah, okay, so he drafted Chuba Herbert, puts him in his lineup at a very good time as he scores 14 points. 21 points from Kyron Williams. Ooh, look at me, I'm Kyron Williams, but I'm hurt now, so, whatever, Andy, so I do something for you, and now I'm gone. Tyreek Hill does that stupid stunt where he does a backflip with a phone in his hand. No one gives a shit about Tyreek Hill. We hope he gets injured. And speaking of getting injured, isn't it about time when Keenan Allen just gets something like hamstring, a toe? Like, isn't something supposed to happen to this guy? 14 points. I told you, Andy, I could see him getting 14 points and then everything just dies out at that point. And that's exactly what happened, Andy. Nostradamus with this shit. TJ Hawkinson has been a failure for Andy's team so far, but he's been able to mask it because the rest of his team is scoring points. The last 4 weeks, just 5 points in week 3, 4, 2 points in week 4, 5 points last week, and 5 points this week. Hawkinson's only found the end zone in one game where he scored 2 touchdowns, so he hasn't been a good keeper selection for Andy. And Puka Nacua with just 2 points. Over on the other side, you had 10 points from a Christian McCaffrey who gets injured. Now, the possibility of him playing is, it's probable that he plays, so he's not completely out. But I like the fact that it's on a Monday night game, so this could very well fuck Eric over unless he makes a waiver pickup where he either picks up Mason or the other guy, I forget what his name is. Unless he picks up one of those guys, this could be a very conflicting week for Eric as he has to make a decision. If they make it a game time decision and Christian McCaffrey doesn't play and Eric has nobody in the slot, that would be absolute gold. 0 points from Gabe Davis. I'm sure that was frustrating because, as I said, Gabe Davis is a shooting star. Adam Thielen with 17 points. Now, Eric made me an offer about two to 3, I think about 2 weeks ago. It involved Adam Thielen and another player, which I'm assuming was a tight end, in return for Mark Andrews. I wasn't interested in it. I know that Adam Thielen is having a comeback year. It's a thing for him. He's got 107 yards last week, 15 yards this week. He's on a bye for week 7. I know that this year is a thing for Adam Thielen, but I wasn't willing to give up Mark Andrews in exchange for him. Maybe if he would have added a little something on top, maybe a little running back, maybe a little Ramondre Stevenson. Would that have been asking too much from me? I want to hear a response from Eric. Ramondre Stevenson for Adam Thielen and in exchange for Mark Andrews. Would I do that deal? Maybe. Of course, maybe Eric will say that, no, the stock has risen too much on Adam Thielen. That's fine. Fuck you. Go fuck yourself, you piece of shit. You should make this trade with me, man. We're blood, man. We're blood. We're fucking related. You should do this. So I want to make that live. That live proposal here. Live in for the week 6 recap. Adam Thielen, Ramondre Stevenson in exchange for Mark Andrews. Just throwing that out there. This is how you make trades happen, guys. No fucking trades have happened so far this year. Kudos to Eric for fucking, for actually making a trade proposal and not just saying something in the chat. But, no other trades have been made. Why is that? And the trade deadline is coming up soon. It's coming up sometime next month. I'll update you guys on that this week, or maybe if one of these assholes from the other podcasts listens to this, maybe they'll let you know. And 10 points on the bench from Amari Cooper, who I would like as well. So Amari Cooper, I'm just looking at him, just a little interested. So let's move on to the very last game of the week as Ricky O loses to Plathanos 72-79. The kid's got alligator blood. Can't get rid of him. Can't get rid of Hensel. 14 points from Trevor Lawrence. An injury to David Montgomery, which makes me so very happy. Just 2 points from him. Tony Pollard shows up for Hensel with 11 points. Hensel just needed 4 points, but Tony Pollard got him 11. Chris Olave with a 9-point performance. Chris Olave, does he get any touch? He's got 1 touchdown last week. Damn, and just 12 yards. Again, Hensel's wide receivers are just... Hensel's got nothing with his wide receivers. Drake London getting a touchdown. Look at that. I don't know if Hensel was aware that he keeps starting Drake London, but Drake London, over the past 2 weeks, he's done something, right? He's got 78 yards last week, only 7 points, no touchdown, but 125 yards this week, along with a touchdown. No touchdown, just 125 yards, but Drake London putting up numbers. And obviously, Najee Harris on a bye. That was probably a good thing for Hensel. On the other side, you had 16 points from Lamar Jackson, just 7 points from James Cook, and 9 points from DeAndre Swift. Devontae Smith with just 4 points. Sorry, Devontae Adams, Devonta, whatever the fuck it is. Paul, let me tell you something. And this is a teachable moment that I want to just... I just want to bring everybody in on this teachable moment. So just come closer. Just come a little bit closer. Hensel and I used to record songs together. Right? Hensel was the engineer, and we also used to make songs with someone by the name of Murder. You guys remember him? So Murder always had this habit of when he would record songs and, he would finish his verses, Hensel would point out, because afterwards Hensel would listen to the verse a cappella just to see if there were any mistakes. Hensel would listen to it, and if Murder didn't pronounce something correctly, Hensel would say, hey, you messed up here, and Murder would always do this. And back then it was just funny. You were 20, 21, whatever the fuck. Back then it was just funny. Murder would always say, I'm Murder, motherfucker! He would just always just yell like that. Just say, I'm Murder, motherfucker! It was always hilarious. But as I grew older and I created different things, after, no longer making music, which of course, making music led me to feature on a song with a hip hop legend. Okay. I'm not going to say who that legend is, but if you know your hip hop history, he was on The Symphony with Marley Marl. Okay. So if you know your history or you have to do your Googles, go ahead and do that. One of those rappers featured on a song that I created, that I wrote the hook for. Okay. So that's what rapping led to, and then I stopped doing that. But what Murder used to do became a jewel to me through the years, because what it communicated was, I don't give a shit about perfection. I don't care about being methodical with every single thing that I do. You'll often find that in the creative field, perfection is the enemy of production. It always is. It's what isolates you. It's what holds you into a box. It tells you that you have to do something the way it's supposed to be done. And if you don't do it right, do it again. Do it again. Do it again. And what normally leads to do it again is eventually you do nothing. That's what it's always served me as. It's just a reminder of fuck perfection. Always strive for quantity, not quality. Yes, you heard that right. Always strive for quantity, not quality. If you stay in this box where you have to be great every time you perform, or you have to be accurate every time that you speak, then eventually you become a genius inside of your own head, and the chatter that goes on in your mind will be sufficient serotonin enough for you to not create anything. Right? It no longer becomes about the reaction or the responses about what you make. It's just your voice inside of your own head is enough. And when it's enough, you do shit. So I always allow that to be a lesson to me. I'm Murder, motherfucker. I'm Murder, motherfucker. I don't care how this comes out. If the recaps were always like, if every word is pronounced correctly and every player's name is said exactly the way that it is, it would have to be redone so many times. And don't you forget this. Don't you forget that you're listening to the third thing that I do well. The third thing that I do well is talk about fantasy football in this podcast with you. So don't nitpick at what I do. Make something. You make something. something. Encourage your kids to make something. I have a podcast with my 3-year-old son. I have a podcast with him to monitor his speech. Of course, I'm not going to show you that podcast because I just, keep it for myself. But I'm always making other things when you don't hear me. This way of thinking has allowed me to continue to create things in my 40s. You know how fucking difficult it is? You know how difficult it is to make shit throughout your entire 30s, throughout your entire 30s, and now still in your 40s, still making shit? Okay? So, Devonta Smith, Paul, and that's not necessarily directed at Paul. As I said, it is a teachable moment because I can teach, but I choose not to teach because, of course, we're just here to talk our shit. Just 4 points from Devonta Smith. Jordan Addison with 8 points. And Darren Waller has been a low point for Orlando's team so far. He is the 13th ranked tight end, right? Just 3 points week 1, 7, 2, 2, 8, 4. No touchdowns so far this year. At what point is the commish just going to go elsewhere? Maybe picking somebody up from the player pool. I mean, you might get lucky sometimes with these tight ends. This will probably be the last season where we have the position. But maybe it's a position that you should start to streamline, Orlando. And the minute that you do stream the position, he's going to go off for 2 touchdowns and like 80 yards. It's what's going to happen. Of course, he gets another 100-yard performance from Diggs. Diggs is, another 100. 4 weeks straight. Stephon Diggs has 100 yards, so you're welcome, Commish. But he, of course, gets the loss in this situation. Hensel's still there. Hensel's just hanging around. But don't forget, you can win 5 games and still not make the playoffs. You can do that. Yeah. We're not going to be in a scenario where in 4 weeks, Hensel's going to have like 6 wins. And I'm like, at some point, I'm going to start singing a different tune. But we're not going to sing that tune because eventually, David Montgomery injury, it's just going to happen. So let's go to the standings. We have at top of the WCW division, we have Highlander Trilogy at 5-0-1, Pork Chop Express at 3-3, Ricky O at 3-3, Big Papa Poop at 3-3, and Joelicus Maximus at the bottom with 2-4. At this point, we didn't even think Joe would have, one victory. What he did last week, and, now he did what he did, so kudos to Joe. Ewok Rape at top of the NWO division at 4-1-1. At the very least, Andy did that. He slowed down Eric, which is what I needed on a losing week. Plathanos, second in the division at 3-2-1. The Team Bundy, the Toronto Bundy, at 2-3-1 in the third slot. Jokes on You in the fourth at 2-4. And at the bottom of the NWO division is Acknowledge Me. The top scorers in the league are as follows. Ewok Rape with 641. Pork Chop Express, 608. Right behind him, Highlander Trilogy at 604. Joelicus Maximus with 548. And Team Bundy in the fifth slot with 543. So check this out. So I faced Jay this week, and I'm going to try to predict. I'm going to try to narrow down who Jay is going to pick up, as he has nobody in his bench at the quarterback position. Now, Dak Prescott is on a bye. Do I think Jay would have selected Dak? Probably not. I think it's only between 3 quarterbacks here. There's a possibility that he picks up Russell Wilson, who's going up against the Green Bay Packers, or Geno Smith, who's going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who are the 28th ranked team against quarterbacks, or Jared Goff against the Baltimore Ravens. Not very likely because of the matchups of Russell Wilson and Jared Goff. So maybe Geno Smith. Let's say that. Geno Smith. I don't exactly want to lock it in. Honorable mention, Jordan Love. Jordan Love, who, opposes Russell Wilson. The Denver Broncos are the 31st ranked team against quarterbacks. So maybe Jordan Love. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling good about it because Big Papa Poop ain't shit. Let's see. Who else does he have here for the Week 7 matchups? Yeah, Big Papa Pooh, he's got Brian Robinson against the Giants. You've got Calvin Ridley, who's been kind of a disappointment. Nico Collins is on a bye. Now, I've got the worst buys in this situation as I have Jamar Chase. I have Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon doesn't really hurt me. Like, I could put in Jaylen Warren and feel okay with it because what the fuck is Joe Mixon going to do that Jaylen Warren can't at this point? Right? I mean, Joe Mixon, he's got 12 points week 3, but everything else is just like 6, 5. He scored a 9 last week, but whatever. Acknowledge Me going up against Joelicus Maximus in a very interesting matchup of a 1-win team against a 2-win team. And the advantage seems to go to Acknowledge Me in this situation. And I'm sure something that Ed loves very much here. He's got Brock Purdy and he's got Brandon Ayuk in the Monday night game. So let's see how that goes. Joke's on you going up against Highlander Part 3. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Andy's going to go 6-0-1 here. I think when we face Highlander next week, I think Andy's going to be 6-0-1. I think so. I don't think there's any way Pedro pulls off the victory here. There's just no fucking way. He's got, who does he have on a bye? He has, Pedro has somebody on a bye here. Oh, of course, he's got Joe Burrow on a bye. There's just no way he wins. Pedro's got Joe Burrow on a bye. It's just not going to happen. Andy's going to win. I think you should just lock that one in for Week 7. Ewok Rape going up against Ricky O. Look, another situation here. Well, I don't see Orlando getting out of this one. I think Orlando's going to lose another game. I think Eric was very calculated when he went with Orlando to the Run the Jewels concert, because since then the commish has had a losing record, living the fast life like Pimparelli, just doing a little bit too much. Probably did some coke later on that night. I don't know what's happening with the commish. He's got to do something with Darren Waller. He needs Saquon Barkley back as Saquon. And Saquon's going up against the Washington Generals, those divisional matchups. I don't know, commish. I don't know. And the last matchup is Plathanos against Pork Chop Express. Let's see what happens with Hensel. He's not going to have Tony Pollard. He's probably not going to have David Montgomery. No, not probably. He doesn't have David Montgomery. I like where things are trending for Pedro and for Hensel. Hensel got the victory. Yes, he did get the victory. Orlando scored 72 points. It's kind of like my loss. They're kind of the same, You got to win, but you scored 70-something points. So yeah. That's pretty much it. Take what I say and lock it in. Think about it. Think about any situation you've ever had as far as creating anything. Whether that was, in school when you had to make a presentation and you were just overthinking it too much. You didn't do shit, or you didn't do it as efficiently as you would have done it if you just would have made swift decisions and just kept on creating and just kept making shit. Make shit. Okay? One thing that I will say about Paul is that Paul is the most likely person in this league to have a burner account. I'll say that. Paul's definitely a person who has a burner account, either on TikTok, he's got it on Instagram, or on YouTube, and he hounds creators. And he tells them, well, actually, it's a little... I bet you Paul has a burner account. I fucking bet you. In the same way that Marie from Breaking Bad would just shoplift for the thrill, I think Paul gets a thrill out of correcting people. So, as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourself.